Katawa Shouju was the first visual novel that I ever played, and it took all of 5 seconds in the launcher for me to decide that this was cringe. I mean, look at this and tell me that a 15-year-old guy is going to be like, yeah, I mean, I have Call of Duty and Battlefield and StarCraft and a bleeding-edge gaming PC, but you know what I want to play with all that horsepower? The fucking anime book, with soft piano music playing in the background. So I promptly closed the launcher and wrote off the whole genre as picture books for neets, and it wouldn't be for another 3 years that I would give the game the courtesy of actually playing it. As a real-life word cell, the idea of reading a picture book one sentence at a time, having to click every time to move the story forward, was just insulting. I mean, really, at that point, what's the difference between playing a visual novel and playing a PowerPoint? The answer is not much, but I did end up playing the game through to completion. Twice. In this game, this glorified PowerPoint with sappy piano music and an off-pink color palette would be the genesis of one of the most profound periods of introspection in my life. And god damn do I hate admitting that. Do you know how much of a fucking loser you look like when you're talking to a bunch of philosophy students, and you've read the greats of history, the founding fathers of different philosophies the world over, from Buddha to Locke, and the trigger for your greatest shift in personal understanding came from the 4chan anime game? Either way, this game was really affecting on me, and I'm not the only one. Go on any of the forums talking about this, and between the shocking amounts of erotica, you'll find thousands of testimonials about the impact that this game has had on people. And if this game has had such a profound impact on a supreme gentleman such as myself, then perhaps it would be worth introducing you to it. First, a quick history lesson to get us up to speed. It all started with this doujinshi. This is a single pane at the back of a doujin by Reita. Although the original had existed far earlier, on the 4th of January 2007, a colored and translated version of this panel was posted on the A board on 4chan. And once an anon suggested the idea of making a game based on this panel, the board promptly burst into flames. There was an absolute maelstrom of character breakdowns, plot outlines, character descriptions, dozens of threads every day talking about this game concept. It was such a nuisance on the board that it's got its own sticky, which really goes to show you. The people never want what you're selling. Can you imagine how Raita feels about this whole thing? Imagine dedicating years of your life to becoming a mangaka, and then putting all this work into a doujin, and the thing that blows up from it is the one-page freebie sketch in the back. Anyway, back on the boards, things were too chaotic. Everybody was trying to shove their own ideas into the game. Some people wanted a touching love story, others wanted a raunchy fetish game. It's madness, and nothing's getting done. So the most active community members joined together and formed the aptly named 4-Leaf Studio. You know, 4, like 4chan. It's a lot like Cracker Barrel. It tells you who's in it right on the front. With the real work on the game officially beginning in the summer of 2007, nobody could have anticipated that it would be 5 years to the day of the original Doujin post that Katawa Shouju would be released to the public. And the development cycle of this game could be an hour-long video on its own. As one might imagine, when your talent pool consists entirely of volunteers from one of the internet's most notorious image boards, the office dynamics can be a bit much. But the game eventually does release, and obviously the marketing pitch of the game about banging crippled chicks made by 4chan doesn't really have that mass market appeal, but the audience who did play the game gave it glowing reviews. But how good is the story really? Your name is Hiseo, and your heart is a piece of shit. And after having a short discussion with a member of the opposite sex, you have the understandable reaction of going into catastrophic cardiac arrest. Bad news, though. This episode has done so much damage to your heart that you are being sent to a special school for special kids. Physically special. The Yamaku Academy, all of the photos of which are actually from Brown University in the United States, is where this story takes place and where through your adventures you will meet 5 girls and 1 best girl. From here, the story splits into 5 branches with 13 total endings, each corresponding to a good, bad, or true ending for each of the girls you meet. The girls move in pairs. There's Emi and Rin. Emi has no legs from the knees down and Rin has no arms. There's Misha and Shizune. Shizune is deaf and Misha is... we don't really know, but she's here too. Lastly, there's Hanako and Lily. Hanako has whole body burn scars, and Lily is blind. You might be wondering why a blind girl doesn't just go to a school for the blind, and the story answers this question with, I don't know, just go with it. There's also an alternative ending for the incels. Of course, explaining what I like about this or that character's route would include talking about major plot points, which sort of defeats the purpose of playing the thing. So instead of going over one of the paths, let me try to describe all of them at once. Each route can be best understood as an exploration of a given personal struggle. The girls each have a sort of tentpole problem that their story focuses on, whether that be dealing with emotional trauma, finding purpose, or just learning to be vulnerable to others. Everyone in this story has had a lifetime's worth of bad luck, from the visceral to the mundane, but they just live through it. It would have been so easy to turn these stories into pity parties for the characters, but throughout the story, the thing you come to realize is that their struggles and desires are the same as anyone else their age, the same as yours. The fact that the person you're listening to is missing their arms or is covered in scars is just background noise to their story. At its core, Katawa Shouju shows how the strange can be very familiar. It doesn't use its characters like props to pass on some ham-fisted narrative about acceptance. It guides you down this path by bringing you into the foreign world of disabled life and then shows you how normal that world actually is, how human these people are. I think this dynamic works so well in this game because the people who were writing these characters were their own kind of strange. Not to deal in too strong of a stereotype, but I'm pretty comfortable saying that the kinds of people who end up on A wouldn't qualify as normies. It's a story about being an outsider, written by outsiders. And I can say that Rin's story in particular had a visceral effect on me for personal reasons. If you're a reader, you've probably had the experience every once in a while of reading something and thinking, yeah, this guy gets it. I have a feeling that me and the writer of Rin shared a lot of the same insecurities, and so that route is the one that lives rent-free in my head, right next to the Optimum poker hands and old memes. But the question arises, would I recommend it? And yeah, but with an asterisk. And that might sound weird given my last few minutes of speech, but let me explain. The piss in the punch bowl of this game is that I think the story will only be as impactful as it was on me to a very narrow group of people. The stories on their own are very sweet, and if you can get over the cringe cascade that is visual novels, then you might just enjoy the stories in their own right. But I have a feeling the sort of deep, affecting experience that this game has on a lot of people is a function of the players themselves just as much as, if not more so, than the story. Personally, it's one of my favorite games, and it had a very deep effect on me in high school. But I'm not going to pretend that it'll do that for everyone, when I know that so much of the reason I enjoy the game is because of my personal experiences. I think it's a good experience for everyone. And the story is about building bridges and relationship dynamics and the confusion of high school and finding what makes you happy, and it's all set in this major intersection in life, and I'm willing to say that it may not change your life. It may just be a kind of old, slice of life visual novel. But you should probably play it at least once. And that's why this visual novel is for losers. I think you may have to actually be a loser to get the full experience. As fucking weird as that sounds. Until next time.